Karen stole my motorcycle. He froze when the police found it in his own garage. The tow truck lights were still spinning red when I realized my motorcycle was gone from my own driveway. I stood barefoot on the concrete, staring at the empty spot where my Harley had been parked for 3 years. My name is Gabriel, and this is the story of how one woman tried to ruin my life over a parking spot. She smiled at me from her porch across the street, coffee mug in hand, like she hadn't just called a tow company. "Rules are rules, Gabriel," she said. "You'll thank me later." I didn't know it yet, but that smile would cost her everything she had built. My name is Gabriel Reyes. I'm 34, a mechanical engineer, and I moved into Willowbrook Estates 2 years ago. I bought my house with money I saved working double shifts through college, no family handouts, just grit. The neighborhood was quiet, tree-lined, the kind of place you dream about when you're young and broke. I never imagined the HOA president would become the villain of my life. Her name was Karen Whitfield. Yes, that really was her name, and yes, the irony followed her everywhere. Karen ran the Willowbrook HOA board like a personal kingdom, and everyone on the street knew to stay quiet. Mailboxes had to be a specific shade of black. Grass had to be cut every 8 days, not 9. She once fined a widow 2 houses down for a wind chime that was too loud during daylight hours. Nobody fought back. Fighting Karen meant fines, liens, or worse, a target on your back for years. I kept my head down at first. New house, new job, I didn't need drama. My motorcycle, a restored 2003 Harley-Davidson, sat proudly in my driveway every single day. It wasn't blocking anything. It wasn't against any rule I'd ever read in the HOA handbook. But Karen didn't like it. She thought it made the street look trashy, her word, not mine. One morning I found a warning notice taped to my front door, citing a rule that didn't exist. I called the HOA office, calm and polite, asking to see the actual bylaw she referenced. The woman on the phone stammered, then transferred me straight to Karen herself. "It's a safety concern," Karen said flatly. "Motorcycles attract the wrong kind of visitors." I asked what that meant. She hung up on me without an answer. That was the moment I stopped being polite and started paying very close attention. I began keeping a folder. Every notice, every email, every photo of the violations she invented. My neighbor Denise, the widow with the wind chime, warned me to just let it go. "She'll bury you in fines until you sell," Denise whispered over the fence one evening. I told her I wasn't planning on selling anything, especially not to satisfy someone else's ego. Little did I know, Karen had already started building a file on me too. 2 weeks after the first warning, a second notice appeared, this time threatening a lien on my house. $500 a week until the motorcycle was removed from public view, it read. I checked the actual HOA covenants, the real legal document filed with the county, line by line. There was no rule about motorcycles. Karen had written the notice herself, citing a clause that never existed. I photographed the notice, timestamped it, and saved a digital copy to 3 separate drives. My gut told me this woman had done this before, to someone who never fought back. I started asking around the neighborhood, casually, over fences and at the mailbox. An older man named Walt mentioned he'd been forced to repaint his shutters twice under similar threats. Another neighbor lost a small claims case because they didn't have documentation, just their word against Karen's. That pattern told me everything. Karen relied on people giving up before they understood their rights. I wasn't going to give up. I decided to fight her on paper, quietly, without a single outburst. I requested the HOA's official meeting minutes for the past 2 years through a formal records request. Karen tried to deny the request, claiming the records were under review. Under Texas law, HOA records have to be provided within a set number of business days. She was breaking her own rules. I sent a certified letter citing the statute number directly. Her tone changed within 24 hours. Suddenly the records were found and mailed to me the very next day. Buried in those minutes was something strange. Karen had approved a special assessment nobody voted on. $3,000 per household, allegedly for landscaping improvements that never happened. I cross-referenced the neighborhood's actual appearance. Not a single new plant, no new sidewalk, nothing. Where had that money gone? That question would haunt Karen far more than she expected. I didn't confront her yet. I wanted more before I moved. Instead, I filed a public information request with the county for the HOA's registered financial reports. HOAs in Texas are required to file certain disclosures, especially regarding collected assessments. The filings were incomplete. 2 years of missing financial statements, conveniently the same years as the assessment. My engineering brain loves patterns, and this pattern screamed something was very wrong. Meanwhile, the motorcycle fines kept arriving weekly, now totaling over $4,000. Karen posted a notice at the community mailbox kiosk, without naming me directly, mocking certain residents who disrespect our standards. Everyone knew who she meant. A few neighbors actually laughed behind her back for the first time. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a plan with 3 phases: document, expose, dismantle. Karen had no idea the quiet man with the motorcycle was about to become her worst nightmare. Phase 1 was documentation, and I treated it like an engineering project with deadlines and checklists. I built a spreadsheet tracking every fine, every notice, every date, cross-referenced against the actual bylaws. I photographed my motorcycle every single day, proving it never once blocked a walkway or fire lane. I recorded phone calls, legally, since Texas is a one-party consent state, so it was fully legal. Karen's voice on those recordings grew more careless with every call, more confident nobody would push back. "I don't need to show you a rule, Gabriel, I am the rule," she said in one recording. I saved that line. It would matter later, more than she could ever imagine. Denise started quietly feeding me information too, tired of watching her neighbors get bullied for years. She remembered Karen once bragging at a board dinner about creative bookkeeping for HOA funds. I asked Denise if she'd be willing to say that under oath someday. She hesitated, then nodded. Meanwhile, my lien situation escalated. Karen filed paperwork attempting to place an actual lien on my property. A lien like that could tank my credit and threaten my ability to refinance my mortgage. This wasn't a game anymore. This was my home, my future, under direct legal attack. I hired a real estate attorney, Priya Malhotra, who specialized in HOA disputes across the state. She reviewed my folder and went quiet for a long moment before looking up at me. "This isn't just aggressive HOA behavior," she said. "This looks like fraud." Priya explained that improperly filed liens, invented rules, and missing financial disclosures could mean real charges. Not just civil penalties, but potentially criminal ones, depending on where that missing assessment money went. For the first time since this began, I felt something other than frustration. I felt hope. We drafted a formal cease and desist letter, demanding Karen remove the fraudulent lien within 10 days. Karen's response was pure Karen. She doubled down instead of backing off. She called an emergency board meeting and proposed banning motorcycles neighborhood-wide, clearly targeting me alone. I attended that meeting, calm, prepared, recorder in my pocket, folder in hand. She tried to block me from speaking, citing a non-existent rule about non-agenda items. Priya had prepped me well. I calmly cited the actual HOA bylaws requiring open comment periods. The room went silent. Several neighbors, including Walt, straightened up in their chairs. I read the timeline aloud: fake rules, invented fines, a lien with no legal basis. Karen's face flushed red, but she kept smiling, insisting I was harassing the board. Then Denise stood up. My heart nearly stopped. She hadn't told me she would speak. "I want to know where the landscaping assessment money went," Denise said, voice shaking but clear. The room erupted into murmurs. Nobody had ever dared bring up the missing assessment publicly before. Karen tried to deflect, claiming the funds were reallocated for legal reserves, a phrase she clearly made up. But another board member, a quiet man named Frank, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I noticed it immediately. Frank knew something. My engineer brain filed that detail away for later. The meeting ended in chaos, Karen banging her little gavel, shouting the meeting was adjourned. As people filed out, Frank caught my eye and gave the smallest, most nervous nod. 2 days later, an anonymous email landed in my inbox with a single attachment, a bank statement. The account was labeled Willowbrook HOA Reserve, and it wasn't the account listed in official filings. Karen had opened a second account, funneling assessment money there, away from board oversight entirely. I forwarded everything to Priya immediately. She read it twice, then called me within the hour. "This is enough for a forensic audit request," she said. "Now we go through the proper channels." We filed a formal complaint with the state's HOA Regulatory Division, attaching every piece of evidence. At the same time, Karen escalated her attack on me personally, filing a restraining order request. She claimed I had threatened her during the meeting, twisting my calm statement into something violent. The judge reviewed my recording of the actual meeting. The request was denied within minutes. Karen's lawyer, a tired-looking man named Bill, seemed increasingly uncomfortable representing her. Outside the courthouse, Bill quietly told my attorney, "I didn't know about the second account." That told us something important. Even Karen's own lawyer was being kept in the dark. Meanwhile, the tow company that took my motorcycle finally responded to my records request. The tow order had been signed by Karen personally, using HOA letterhead she wasn't authorized to use that way. Under state towing law, an HOA cannot authorize private property tows without specific documented violations. My motorcycle had never violated anything. The tow itself was completely illegal. I filed a police report for unauthorized vehicle removal, alongside the ongoing HOA fraud complaint. Detective Mara Collins caught the case and she was sharp, thorough, and clearly unimpressed by HOA politics. She requested the impound records and traced my motorcycle to a storage facility 20 minutes away. But something didn't add up. The storage facility's paperwork listed a different pickup address entirely. Detective Collins pulled the address. It matched Karen's home, specifically her attached garage. My motorcycle wasn't sitting in some tow yard. Karen had taken it to her own house. I felt something cold settle in my chest, replacing frustration with pure disbelief. She hadn't just harassed me over parking. She had stolen my property and hidden it in her garage. Detective Collins explained they'd need a warrant before searching Karen's property directly. Building probable cause meant gathering every document, every recording, every inconsistency we already had. Priya and I spent an entire weekend organizing the fraud complaint alongside the theft evidence. The timeline painted a clear picture: fake rules, fraudulent lien, illegal tow, missing HOA funds. Frank, the nervous board member, finally agreed to speak with Detective Collins under limited immunity. He revealed Karen had been borrowing HOA funds for over 3 years, always intending to pay it back. Except the numbers never balanced. What started as thousands had grown into tens of thousands missing. Frank admitted he stayed quiet out of fear. Karen had threatened to fine his business address too. With Frank's statement, the fraud case against Karen solidified into something undeniable. Meanwhile, Karen seemed to sense the walls closing in, though she had no idea how close. She started acting strange around the neighborhood, avoiding eye contact, canceling the next HOA meeting entirely. Denise reported seeing Karen's husband loading boxes into their car late one night, almost frantically. I wondered if they were preparing to run, or simply preparing to destroy evidence before anyone noticed. Detective Collins moved fast once the warrant was approved by a judge that same week. She asked me to be present nearby, not inside, just close enough to identify my motorcycle if found. The morning of the search, I sat in my car down the street, hands shaking slightly. 2 patrol cars and Detective Collins's unmarked sedan pulled into Karen's driveway just after 9. Karen opened her door already arguing, insisting this was harassment, insisting she'd sue everyone involved. Detective Collins simply held up the warrant and stepped past her into the house. I watched from a distance as officers moved toward the attached garage at the side of the house. A minute passed. Then two. My heart pounded louder than I thought possible. Then the garage door rolled up and there it was, my Harley, exactly where I'd never parked it. Karen's face, visible even from my car, went completely pale in an instant. She started stammering something about storing it safely and protecting community aesthetics, nonsense excuses. Detective Collins wasn't interested in excuses. She read Karen her rights right there in the driveway. Neighbors began stepping outside, drawn by the flashing lights, watching the scene unfold in real time. Walt stood on his porch with his arms crossed, shaking his head slowly at the woman who'd tormented him. Denise walked over and stood beside me, quiet, watching justice arrive years too late for some of them. I felt no urge to gloat. I just felt relief, the kind that settles deep into your bones. But this was only the beginning of what Karen would actually have to answer for. Karen was arrested that morning on charges related to the illegal tow and unauthorized vehicle possession. The fraud investigation into missing HOA funds continued separately, expanding as more residents came forward. It turned out I wasn't the only target. At least 6 other households had similar fake violation stories. One family had paid over $8,000 in fines for a shed that technically met every rule. Another resident, an immigrant family, had been too afraid of authority to ever question the fines. Once the story broke locally, more people found the courage to share their own Karen encounters. A local news station picked up the story after Priya's office sent them the police report summary. HOA president arrested after neighbor's motorcycle found in her garage ran across screens that evening. Karen's mugshot circulated online within hours, the same confident smile now looking hollow and small. Comments flooded in from people across the country who'd survived their own HOA nightmares. Meanwhile, the forensic audit of HOA finances revealed the missing total, just over $62,000. Some of it had gone to a family vacation Karen had quietly labeled as a board retreat. Some had gone toward home renovations at her own house, ironically the same house code violations targeted others. Frank, having cooperated fully, avoided criminal charges but resigned from the board in humiliation. The remaining board members called an emergency meeting to remove Karen from her position entirely. The vote was unanimous, the fastest and most united decision that board had made in years. Karen's attorney Bill withdrew from representing her once the fraud charges became public record. He reportedly told a colleague he didn't sign up to defend embezzlement, according to court gossip. Karen hired a new lawyer, a sharp litigator from out of town, promising to fight everything. But the evidence was simply too complete: recordings, bank statements, witness testimony and the motorcycle itself. At her arraignment, Karen pleaded not guilty to theft, fraud and unauthorized use of official HOA authority. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions she refused to answer, hiding behind sunglasses and a scarf. I stood at a distance with Priya, watching the woman who once said, "I am the rule," say nothing at all. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in that crowd, especially not the neighbors who had traveled to watch. Back in Willowbrook, the mood shifted almost overnight, like a held breath finally released. New interim board members were elected, people known for fairness rather than control. The fake landscaping assessment was refunded to every household who had paid into it, with interest. My illegal lien was formally dissolved by court order, clearing my name and my credit completely. The $4,000 in bogus motorcycle fines were reversed and the HOA covered my legal fees. Still, none of that undid the months of stress, the sleepless nights, the fear of losing my home. The criminal case moved slowly through the system over the following months, as these things often do. Karen's defense tried arguing diminished responsibility, claiming she believed she had informal authority to seize property. The prosecutor countered by playing my recording of her saying, "I don't need to show you a rule." That single sentence, spoken with such careless confidence, became the defining soundbite of the entire trial. Detective Collins testified about the discovery in Karen's garage, methodical and unshaken under cross-examination. Denise testified about years of fines, wind chimes and residents too frightened to speak up. Frank testified about the missing funds, his voice breaking as he admitted his own complicity through silence. Walt testified about repainting his shutters twice under threats that had no legal basis whatsoever. One by one, Karen's victims found their voice in that courtroom, each testimony chipping away her defense. I testified last, calm and factual, laying out the timeline exactly as my spreadsheet had documented it. The defense attorney tried to rattle me, suggesting I had overreacted to a simple parking dispute. I simply replied, "She stole my property and hid it in her garage. That's not an overreaction." The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty on all counts: theft, fraud, and unauthorized exercise of official authority under HOA governance law. Karen sat motionless as the verdict was read, the confident smile from that first morning long gone. Restitution of the full $62,000, community service and probation. The judge specifically noted her abuse of a position meant to serve, not control, her neighbors. Karen was also permanently barred from serving on any HOA board within the state going forward. Outside the courthouse for the final time, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted and finally free. Denise hugged me, tears in her eyes, thanking me for doing what none of them had dared to do. Walt shook my hand firmly, said he was repainting his shutters back to their original color that weekend. My motorcycle sat safely in my driveway again, exactly where it belonged, exactly where it always should have been. A few weeks later, the new HOA board invited me to join, half joking, half serious. I declined politely. I'd had enough of committees and bylaws to last several lifetimes. Instead, I started something smaller, a neighborhood group chat where people could ask questions without fear. Denise became its unofficial historian, keeping a running list of every real, actual rule for reference. Frank, humbled and quieter now, started mowing lawns for elderly residents as a kind of silent apology. Karen sold her house within the year, unable to face the neighbors she had once ruled over. I heard she moved 2 states away, started over somewhere nobody knew her name or her history. Some habits, though, apparently don't change no matter how far you run from them. About a year later, Priya forwarded me a local news article from Karen's new town. Newcomers cited for unauthorized community fee collection, the headline read, "Disturbingly familiar." Karen had tried starting an unofficial neighborhood beautification fund without any legal authority to collect it. This time, someone recognized her from the viral mugshot photo and reported her within days. I laughed for the first time in a long while reading that headline over my morning coffee. Some people learn from consequences. Others simply relocate and try the same con somewhere new. As for me, life in Willowbrook slowly returned to something resembling normal: quiet mornings, quiet evenings. I still ride my motorcycle every weekend, engine roaring down the same street where this all began. Neighbors wave now instead of watching from behind curtains, a small thing that means everything. Denise waters her wind chimes garden, letting them ring freely whenever the breeze picks up. Walt's shutters stayed their original color, a quiet rebellion nobody needs to explain anymore. The HOA still exists, still collects dues, still enforces real rules, but nothing like before. Meetings are open, records are public, and no single person holds unchecked power over anyone's home. I kept my folder, the original one, tucked away in a drawer, a reminder of what documentation can do. People sometimes ask if I regret how far I took things, all those months of quiet investigation. I tell them the truth: I didn't take it far. I simply refused to let it go unanswered. Karen thought silence was the price of living in her neighborhood. She was wrong about that. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one keeping the most careful records. Justice didn't come from shouting matches or angry confrontations at mailbox kiosks. It came from patience, documentation, and refusing to back down when the truth was on my side. My motorcycle needed a new battery that spring, a small, ordinary task after everything else. I remember standing in my driveway, wrench in hand, thinking how strange ordinary life felt again. Denise brought over lemonade that afternoon and we sat on my porch talking about nothing important at all. That, I realized, was the real victory, getting back the boring, peaceful life Karen had tried to steal. Not the courtroom verdict, not the news coverage, not even the returned money, but simply this quiet porch. The cost, though, was real too. Months of stress, strained sleep, a lingering wariness of authority figures. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, even after the truth wins and the villain finally falls. I still check my mailbox with a flicker of old anxiety, even though the threat is long gone now. Some scars stay quiet, tucked beneath the surface of an otherwise sunny afternoon on a peaceful street. But my motorcycle is home, my name is clear, and Karen answers to a judge now instead of a kingdom.